It starts with the Studebaker, that little car with the dog bobbing in the window, a symbol of whimsy, joy, and a time that felt simpler. And right in the center of it all was Carol Burnett. Her voice could make a room glow. Her face became a symbol of pure joy, of warmth, of home. For decades, she wasn't just a comedian. She was the soul of American laughter. Through her legendary show, through the unforgettable way she embodied Eunice Higgins, Carol carved herself into the lives of millions. She made us laugh with elegance, cry through comedy, and reminded us over and over that healing often wears a costume. But what if the woman who carried so much light spent a lifetime hiding from the dark? What if the applause that roared in every theater was just loud enough to drown out her silence? Now, at 92, the truths behind that smile, behind the curtain call, are more heartbreaking than any monologue she ever delivered. Because for Carol Burnett, the greatest performance of her life was never on stage. Before she became America's beacon of joy, Carol Burnett was just a little girl wrapped in shadows so deep, even the idea of comfort felt foreign. Born in 1933-inch San Antonio, Texas, she entered a world already collapsing, no stability, no love, no safety net. Her father, once enamored with film projection, was consumed by alcohol. Her mother, too, drifted through Carol's childhood like a ghost, emotionally numb, rarely sober, even less present. By the time Carol understood what love should look like, she already knew what it meant to be left behind. Her parents didn't just die from alcohol, they had abandoned her long before their final breaths. Custody passed to her grandmother, Mabel White, a woman poor in possessions but rich in devotion. In 1940, they moved to Hollywood, hoping to find light but landing instead in a single crumbling room within a boarding house full of addicts, drifters, and the discarded. Rent was $20 a week. It left no room for dignity, only survival. But in that broken place, her grandmother gave her what her parents never did, unconditional love. And yet even love can't always stitch together what's already torn. So Carol invented someone who could carry the weight. Karen, her imaginary twin. Karen was loud, bold, loved. Carol would change her clothes, climb the fire escape, and reappear as this braver version of herself. It wasn't a game, it was survival, a child's last defense against invisibility. Still, not all her escapes were imaginary. On Saturdays, she and her grandmother used their only coin, $1 for movie tickets. There, in the flickering dark, she found a world that spoke to her soul. And after the credits rolled, they'd quietly steal toilet paper from the restrooms, too proud to beg, too poor to buy. One day, she heard Tarzan's famous yell echoing through the theater. She mimicked it over and over. She didn't know it then, but she was finding her voice. Later, she would say, "That yell, it was the first time I felt powerful." That scream, born from pain, became the foundation of a legacy built on sound, on courage, and on connection. Carol Burnett didn't start by trying to be funny. She started by trying not to disappear. As a teenager, Carol didn't dream of stardom. She wanted to be a journalist, maybe to give voice to the silence that had shaped her. It was a quiet dream, the kind you fold up and tuck away when life says no. And life did say no firmly. When it came time to apply to UCLA, she lacked a single, impossible number, $50, a wall she couldn't climb. She didn't cry, she didn't beg, she let it go. But then something extraordinary happened. A stranger, unidentified to this day, gave her exactly what she needed. $50. No explanation, no strings, just faith. "He believed in me before I did," Carol would later whisper. That moment didn't just pay for tuition. It opened the door to possibility. She entered UCLA planning to study journalism, clinging to what felt safe. But fate had another idea. A mandatory drama class, a requirement she didn't want, shook her world. There, for the first time, someone saw her. Not as poor, not as invisible, but expressive, electric, alive. "I wasn't shy anymore," she said. "I was funny, loud. I was me." A professor pulled her aside and simply said, "Don't ignore that." And she didn't. She changed her major terrified but determined. It was the first real risk of her life. It paid off. By the end of her first year, she was named the most promising newcomer in UCLA's theater program. It wasn't just an award, it was permission. For the girl who once screamed like Tarzan in a crumbling apartment, she now had a stage and a voice. Just as Carol was beginning to believe in herself, life tested her again. At a party in 1954, while quietly wrapping up leftovers for her grandmother, another stranger, this time a shipbuilding millionaire, asked about her dreams. She told him the truth. She wanted to go to New York to chase Broadway, but she couldn't afford it. He offered her $1,000 for her and $1,000 for her boyfriend with 3 rules. Never reveal his name, use it only for career, and help others if she succeeded. No job, no security, just a ticket to try. They arrived in Manhattan with hope in their hearts and almost nothing else. Money vanished. Auditions came and went, but one strange sign kept her going. A hurricane named Carol was hitting the East Coast. She took it as a message: don't quit. Soon after, she found the rehearsal club, a shared space for hungry dreamers. 4 girls to a room, 1 bathroom, no privacy but shared purpose. Carol worked nights as a hat-check girl, chased auditions by day. It was hard, but it was hers. And then came the moment no one expected. In a small review show, she was given a strange number, a parody ballad about Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, meant as a throwaway, a gag. But Carol saw something more. She gave it everything, playing the absurd with such sincerity. It became unforgettable. The audience roared. Producers took notice. That song, just that one, launched her onto the Jack Paar Show, then the Ed Sullivan Show. Each time, she brought not just laughter, but truth wrapped in comedy. Vulnerability hidden beneath absurdity. Audiences felt it. So did executives. By January 1957, she was trembling backstage at Sullivan's studio. But when the music started, so did she. Her performance wove innocence with irony, and America couldn't look away. From there, Carol said yes to everything, even a role as a ventriloquist's doll's girlfriend. Nothing was too small if it gave her a chance to grow. Then, in 1959, came her biggest break yet. She was cast as Princess Winifred in Once Upon a Mattress, a brash, unfiltered, hilarious misfit who didn't fit the fairy tale mold, and neither did Carol. The show exploded off-Broadway, then onto Broadway. Audiences adored her. Critics hailed her as something fresh. She earned a Tony nomination, but more than that, she earned her place. Exactly 5 years to the day since she received that $2,000, she mailed it back quietly, without announcement. The man never responded, but she didn't need him to. Her life had already become the repayment. Carol's leap into television wasn't marked by headlines. It began with a quirky love song about John Foster Dulles. That parody, once dismissed as a gag, became a revelation. Audiences roared, and producers leaned in. She landed a spot on the Gary Moore Show in 1959. At first, she was just another guest, but over 3 years, she became its heartbeat. Each sketch was her classroom. While others rested, Carol studied timing, chemistry, audience rhythm. Her cleaning lady character became a staple, but the moments that stuck with her most weren't scripted. They were the impromptu Q&As Moore had with the audience. That spontaneity planted a seed in Carol, one that would later define her own show. But the road wasn't smooth. When CBS balked at a special with Julie Andrews, claiming neither woman was famous enough, Carol felt dismissed. Then, in a twist only fate could write, 2 execs overheard her joking about needing a ride, and a truck literally stopped beside her. They took it as a sign. That moment birthed Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall, a program that swept awards and proved her power on primetime. And in 1967, Carol invoked a clause in her CBS contract, one that gave her the right to launch a variety show. CBS pushed back. They offered her a sitcom, but Carol refused. "I wanted sketches, songs, silliness, depth," she said. "I wanted everything." On the 11th of September, the Carol Burnett Show premiered. And it didn't just succeed, it changed everything. At its peak, 30 million Americans tuned in each week. That number terrified me, Carol admitted, because every single laugh mattered. Her show wasn't just funny, it had soul. She opened every episode with, "I'm so glad we had this time together," a phrase that comforted a nation. Behind the curtain, though, it wasn't easy. Carol battled self-doubt. "I'd lie awake wondering if the next episode would fail," she confessed. Yet in a world dominated by men, she became one of the first women to produce, write, and star in her own variety show. She paved the way for future icons like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler. Time and Television Guide ranked her show among the greatest of all time. It won 25 Emmys. Her collaborators became legends. But Carol's true legacy wasn't gold statues. It was sincerity. She didn't just make people laugh, she made them feel seen. Financially, she soared, earning $50,000 a week in the 72nd, the equivalent of over $300,000 today. But she never chased wealth. She used it to give back, to lift others, quietly funding scholarships, mentoring young artists, supporting the arts. "I was given hope," she once said. "Now I try to pass it on." At the height of the Carol Burnett Show, when 30 million people laughed every week and Emmy trophies stacked high, something quietly began to unravel backstage. Harvey Korman Carroll's comedic soulmate on screen started to fade off it. During the 7th season, his warmth gave way to cold silences, erratic moods, even hostility toward guests. The once joyful rhythm between them cracked. One night, Carol confronted him. He shut the dressing room door in her face and said, "I'm just not happy here." It wasn't just the words. It was the loss of trust, the collapse of something that once felt like family. Devastated, Carol called his agent and fired him not out of anger, but grief. But come Monday, Harvey returned lighter, smiling. True to her teasing promise, Carol rehired him on the spot and hung a sign outside his door. "Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky." It was a joke and a pact of vow to protect the joy they'd built. But holding joy together wasn't easy, especially when Tim Conway arrived. Tim was chaos wrapped in genius. He refused to rehearse the same way twice, claiming inspiration came in the moment. During live tapings, he'd derail scenes with unpredictable brilliance. From the infamous elephant story to bizarre improvisations, Tim left castmates gasping with laughter, even broke the famously unflappable Dick Van Dyke. Yet that magic came at a price. The crew was constantly on edge, unsure what might happen next. And Carol? She became the glue, the steady heartbeat. While Tim chased spontaneity and Harvey wrestled with his moods, she held it all together, offering tissues, calming egos, filling silences with encouragement. She wasn't just a star. She was a caretaker. "I had to make them feel safe," she later said. "Otherwise, we'd fall apart." Arya, in a world that confused comedy with ease, Carol Burnett proved that laughter, true laughter, is often forged through fire. And she carried that fire alone, quietly, week after week. In 1977, Carol Burnett stepped onto the stage not as a clown, but as a woman stripped bare. The sketch was called The Gong Show, part of her recurring series The Family, usually filled with Southern eccentricities and harmless dysfunction. But this time, everything changed. The comedy vanished. What remained was raw ache. She played Eunice Higgins, a woman weathered by a lifetime of invisibility, desperately auditioning for a meaningless talent show. But her voice trembled with something real. Each line she sang wasn't parody, it was longing. Each note, a wound. And then came the cruelty. The judges, especially real-life host Alan Ludden, mocked her, brutally, publicly. Carol didn't reach for a punchline. She didn't break into comedic rhythm. She stood there, breath shaky, face streaked with tears, heart wide open. The studio fell silent. No laughter, no applause. Behind the cameras, crew members wept. Critics would call it a tour de force, a breakthrough. But Carol? She never watched it again. Not once in nearly 50 years. Eunice's pain felt like my own, she later admitted. Because it was. That sketch ripped open every buried wound: abandonment, poverty, alcoholism, the feeling of being overlooked, unheard. It wasn't just a performance. It was a confession. The public loved it. The Emmys followed. Even a cult status emerged, eventually birthing a spin-off, Mama's Family and the 1982 film Eunice. But for Carol, the Gong Show sketch was never just entertainment. It was a reckoning. Proof that the most powerful comedy sometimes ends in silence. That courage isn't always the punchline, it's daring to stand there and bleed. While millions laughed with her each week, Carol Burnett was quietly watching her personal life fall apart, one heartbreak at a time. Her first marriage to college sweetheart, Don Saroyan, was full of hope, grounded in shared dreams. But tragedy came quickly. Don's daughter from a previous relationship passed away. Grief devoured him. Alcohol followed. Carol tried to hold him together, but as her star rose, his light dimmed. They separated on Christmas Day, 1959, a holiday that would never feel the same again. The divorce was finalized in 1962. Don never recovered. He died in 1990, still haunted by the life he couldn't hold on to. "I tried to love him enough for both of us," Carol once said, "but he didn't want to be saved." Then came Joe Hamilton, brilliant, driven, and emotionally complex. They married as her fame soared. For a time, they felt like a team. They had 3 daughters, Carrie, Jody, and Erin, and mourned a miscarriage in 1965. Their home buzzed with creativity, chaos, and emotional minefields. Professionally, Joe helped shape her success, but privately, the cracks deepened. Carol often returned from tapings with laughter still fresh on her face, only to find a different kind of performance, waiting, one of silence, emotional drift, and growing distance. "We had all the tools," she once said, "but we kept building separate houses." Joe's need for control, mixed with addiction and pride, created rifts no script could rewrite. Carol, always the peacemaker, poured herself into being a mother, a bridge, a steady hand. Sometimes she'd tuck her daughters in at night, applause still echoing in her ears, knowing the next morning would bring another quiet breakfast, another missed moment. Eventually, the marriage ended. Joe faded from partner to memory. Still, Carol never shut the door. When he passed in 1991, she mourned him not just as an ex-husband, but as a chapter that shaped her. "You can't be funny if you're bitter," she once said. "So I chose healing." And she did. Not by escaping the pain, but by showing up, again and again, for others, for her children, for herself. It starts with the Studebaker, that little car with the dog bobbing in the window, a symbol of whimsy, joy, and a time that felt simpler. And right in the center of it all was Carol Burnett. Her voice could make a room glow. Her face became a symbol of pure joy, of warmth, of home. For decades, she wasn't just a comedian. She was the soul of American laughter. Through her legendary show, through the unforgettable way she embodied Eunice Higgins, Carol carved herself into the lives of millions. She made us laugh with elegance, cry through comedy, and reminded us over and over that healing often wears a costume. But what if the woman who carried so much light spent a lifetime hiding from the dark? What if the applause that roared in every theater was just loud enough to drown out her silence? Now at 92, the truths behind that smile, behind the curtain call, are more heartbreaking than any monologue she ever delivered. Because for Carol Burnett, the greatest performance of her life was never on stage. After Carrie's death, Carol Burnett could have faded quietly into memory. But she didn't. Instead, she kept going, living, grieving, showing up. In 2001, just 2 months before losing Carrie, she married Brian Miller, a musician 23 years her junior. This wasn't some glittery Hollywood romance. It was something quieter, stronger. He didn't try to fix her pain. He simply stood beside it. In him, she found steady shelter when the world felt unbearable. But pain wasn't done with her yet. In the years that followed, her youngest daughter, Erin, began her own descent into addiction. Over 2 decades, Erin cycled through 8 rehabs. There were flickers of recovery, but relapse always returned. Erin became a mother, but struggled deeply. Then in July 2020, things collapsed. After sending alarming messages to her children, she was placed under emergency psychiatric care. Carol, then in her late 82nd, stepped into the unthinkable filing for legal guardianship of her grandson, Dylan. No cameras, no red carpet, just raw love. "When you see your grandchild hurting," she said, "and your own child can't help you, just act." She became a full-time parent, again, not from desire, but from duty. Meanwhile, on screen, Carol stunned audiences with a late-life resurgence. At 89, she played Marion in Better Call Saul, a sweet grandma with sharp instincts. At 91, she transformed into Norma Delacourt in Palm Royale, a comedic turn so layered and surreal it earned her a historic Emmy nomination, the oldest woman ever in her category. But for Carol, it was never about awards. It was always about the craft, the connection, a belief that storytelling, even in old age, could still heal. She lives now in Santa Barbara, in a sunlit home filled with books, memories, and photos of those she's loved and lost. She walks daily, eats clean, meditates. Her smile still carries that mischievous sparkle that once lit up living rooms across America. Financially, she is secure, worth an estimated $45 million. But wealth has never defined her. Her legacy lies in what she gave: laughter, comfort, and proof that even the most broken hearts can keep beating. She rarely gives interviews now, but when she does, she doesn't speak of fame. She speaks of grace, of showing up, of choosing love, even when it hurts. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph all credit her as the trailblazer who made their paths possible. But when asked about her influence, Carol just smiles. "I'm just lucky I got to make people laugh." And maybe that's the most Carol thing of all, hiding 1,000 storms behind one quiet, joyful wink. Because Carol Burnett didn't just survive the stage, she survived life. And she taught us how to keep laughing through it. If Carol Burnett's story has touched even the smallest corner of your heart, if her laughter ever filled your living room, or her strength reminded you to keep going, please take a moment to honor her. Like this video, leave a comment. What moment from her journey moved you the most? And if you believe in the kind of quiet resilience Carol stood for, share this story. Because long after the applause fades, her legacy deserves to keep echoing.